relocate to Niger? Will you? You're not sure?
Definitely not at this point.
Why not?
Things are unstable. I think I'd like to stay right where I am. I'm not going anywhere. Nowhere.
That's the definition of Bakusro. And ECOWAS has been waxing very lyrical on invading Niger and also trying to go and crack the whip, whatever that means. The military have served notice, but not just the Nigerian soldiers in Burkina Faso and Mali. They are united in their call to ECOWAS to say, look, stay where you are, don't come to us. If you come to us, we will deal with you. And that could have an overflow to other parts of West Africa, Ghana included. And that doesn't sound good.
It doesn't. I'm thinking about President Tinubu. How long has he been president for even? And in fact,
his presidency is even being contested.
In
the court.
And I think he's been the ECOWAS chairman for what is it, about a month? And already this is his first time.
He has not been able to fight Boko Haram. He has not been able to do that.
That is right.
We in Ghana have not been able to fight Fulani and the Boko War. We have not been able to do it. And we are thinking of what? Niger, a whole country. Joke they want to face too much.
It appears that as a continent also we're reactive. I often say that leadership in our country is reactive. It appears the ECOWAS is also quite reactive because if they are to safeguard the peace and stability in this region, they should also be looking at some of the things that happen when leaders make certain funny decisions, extending your term, amending constitutions. We don't really feel their power like that. But I think that is what will send a strong signal that they are actually in charge. Waiting for things to turn upside down before we hear you and feel your power. I'm joining in the calls that say, honestly, ECOWAS, let's sit up.
The Niger junta has just appointed General Abdurrahmani Tichani, has named the former finance minister as the new prime minister following the 26th July coup. Ali Mahman Limani Zaini replaces Mahmoudou Ohomodu, who was in Europe during the coup. Mr. Zaini, reported to be in his 50s, served as cabinet director and finance minister from 2001 until the overthrow of the late former president Mahmoudou Tanja by the army in 2010. His appointment was announced in a statement read on state-owned television channel Tele Sahel on Monday the 9th by the junta spokesperson. Mr. Zaini has worked for the Africa Development Bank in Chad, Ivory Coast, and Gabon in recent years, according to the privately owned Actu Niger news website. The junta on Monday also appointed Brigadier General Amadou Didili as the head of the country's high authority for peace consolidation, and Brigadier General Abu Tangu Mahmoudou as the Inspector General of the Army and the National Gendarmerie. It's named Colonel Ibro Amadou Bichoru, the private chief of staff of the junta leader, and Lieutenant Colonel Habibu Asumani, right, as the commander of the presidential guard. So that's the latest from Niger. That's what's happening. People are taking their places in the future of their country, as the Presecans will say. So come along and join us.
I'm watching tersely as the events unfold. The temperature is quite hot, and I hope the next set of decisions made by the ECOWAS do not further aggravate the situation. But it also goes without saying that the ECOWAS cannot sit back and watch for Niger to descend completely into chaos, if that is what will ensue. It'll be also worthwhile to gauge the temperature in Niger, how they're faring, how things are going, and really what the military junta's plan is moving forward. I'm curious.
I'm looking at ECOWAS with one eye and thinking that ECOWAS has so far not proven to be up to the task, because ECOWAS looks on while democratic presidents, swap the constitution or amend the constitution to give them another term. ECOWAS looks on while political situations get worse. ECOWAS looks on while the people are kept in economic situations. ECOWAS looks on for everything else to happen. ECOWAS only intervenes when there's military intervention. And for me, I think that's bad leadership. ECOWAS is fast becoming a joke. How do you even make Bola Tinubu, whose election is being contested in the court, how do you make him president of ECOWAS? Is it to give him a seat and some level of permanency and legitimacy, or what? It's a question that must be asked. It's a big question that must be asked. So, and now he gets in there, and the first decision he wants to take is that let's protect one of our own who is being pushed out by the military. What did that person do? That's the question. What did that person do? And when he started doing what he did to provoke the military, did ECOWAS speak?
I'm just looking here at ECOWAS's 3 main aims and objectives. And it says here on its own website, it aims to establish an economic union in West Africa in order to raise the living standards of its people, maintain and enhance economic stability, foster relations among member states, and contribute to the progress and development of the African continent. ECOWAS, what is your scorecard?
Yes, what is your scorecard? William, do you know ECOWAS's scorecard?
Well, what I can say about what ECOWAS is going through is that the African continent as a region and ECOWAS as a sub-region, we've just borrowed something that obviously is not working for us. The kind of governance, the kind of democracy that Africa has swallowed hook, line, and sinker, is not working for us. Because if you look at the democracies around the world, if you look at their beginnings, the kind of democracies that they had, if you look at China goes to the election every time. They have a party. You understand? If you go to Russia, at a point, Putin was a prime minister, becomes prime. I'm not endorsing that. That's what they've been able to create for their environment. Right. It is working for them.
Right.
It is quite obvious that the kind of development that
it's not working
is
for us.
Lacking in Africa, and the speed at which the people want to move and the expectations of the masses. This kind of democracy is just creating a platform, a space for those who are able to win power and the very people around them to just better their lives, and they move. And that is so across the continent. And that's how somebody can be in office for 39 years, 40 years, and that cannot be a democracy. So if that is what we want, that somebody wants to be in power forever, then let's develop our democracy around that.
But is it possible?
No, I'm saying, because since
it looks like people desire for that. Those who get into power want to stay on forever.
So if it is not something that we want, let's also look at midterm elections, where we say you are in for 4-5 years. So after 2 years, if it's a 4-year term, we're going to have a look at you, and maybe not a mass election or something, maybe some parliamentary something to kick the government. Something should work, because it is becoming quite clear that over the years, especially around the French-speaking West African states, and the hold of France on the economies of these countries is so tight. Now it is clear that what Kwame Nkrumah preached, we've not been able to achieve at all in terms of the economic emancipation, even the political independence. So the discussion must be as broad as it should be. It shouldn't be haphazard. It shouldn't be ad hoc.
William, do you get a sense that because we are used to chieftain issues?
I said it this morning when we were doing the news. I said, look, culture and development is something that we haven't looked at critically.
Right.
Because you mentioned that.
Because the chieftain issues seem to be finding presence in the kind of democracy we are practicing.
Somebody comes to power and he wants to behave like a chief, like a king.
Emperor, like an emperor.
You know, so I'm saying that we need to look at these things critically And just yesterday, I heard a report of Speaker Bagbin suggesting that we should look at this chiefs thing again and bring them to the chamber, and if possible, regularize their presence in politics and so on and so forth. So I'm saying we should look at what has happened in the past for some countries. Look, China closed its borders literally for about 40 years to the rest of the world.
So
and one man was leading them.
Yeah.
They agreed. Kwame Nkrumah was preaching one-party state. They said it wasn't good, so they threw him out. Even reports after that, the CIA came in and so on. So what I'm saying is that Rawlings was here for close to 20 years. The way they came in and killed people, it is not what I'm preaching. I'm just looking at the governance system. I don't say somebody should pick up arms. I'm saying that even if you go to the polls, is it to still vote for people 4 years, 5 years, as is happening in Africa and it's not working? And if they stay in power too long, are they going to now be handing over to their children, as happened in Togo and some parts of Africa? So the discussion is not just about ECOWAS, where somebody will come, as we have next door, Al-Hassani Ouattara came and said, look, the man in the Gbagbo is trying to twist the constitution, so let's get him out. He comes after 2 terms, he's there for a 3rd term. ECOWAS did not speak. You understand what I'm... So if you look at even the ECOWAS leaders today,
precisely,
and look at how they are running their countries, it is the same issues that brought people like Chairman Rawlings into office, and he became President Rawlings. The same thing that brought Sankara and got him out through another coup. The same thing that brought all those people. So the reasons why the military come in and out have not changed. And the expectations of the people have not been met. We are still driving on dirt roads. People don't have electricity. People don't have water. Corruption is rife.
Street lights and traffic lights.
So what I'm asking is, all these years, since the 1960s and late 1950s, where countries claim to be getting independence from colonial masters, what have we done?
What have you done with the
I have an
independence?
answer for you, because we learn from history.
That we do not learn.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, even the crop of leaders in the ECOWAS group now, look at them and what is happening in their countries.
William's point is cogent, though.
Very much so.
Since we gained independence, what have we done?
What have we done consciously?
On our own, for ourselves? What have we done?
Because
we still go back to go and borrow.
Because
we still import. So this morning, you may go to the market and the price of onions will be expensive because Niger is in turmoil. The onions that we import from Niger will not come to us. But we have spent monies on planting for food and job. And you're supposed to have onions here. And we are even supposed to be exporting, if you look at the principles of planting for food and job. So
I mean, even in the entire African continent imports 80% of its food.
We don't even trade with ourselves to begin with.
So in terms of emancipation, politically, fiscally, spiritually,
the sacrifice that we need as leaders to develop the continent, we are not seeing that sacrifice. Because if you watch, as Helen would say, the optics, when Vice President Biden then left office, the reading I had was that he just sat on a train back to where he came from. You go to Holland, Netherlands, their prime minister is on a bicycle. You see, so let's just have people think that you are one of us when you claim that the previous government is corrupt. But when you come as a president, you are attending a private wedding ceremony and you have a convoy
with a chair in the
there's
V8.
a problem. There's a problem, and these are things that
wrong.
And you if you go to the military barracks, you go to the police barracks.
They live
you go
modestly.
A prison officer, a police officer is sleeping in the chamber and hall with his fridge outside.
This studio is too big, William.
You know, with his fridge outside. If you go to the prison's headquarters now, go there and see.
Go to 37.
Go to 37.
Go to Bema camp.
Look,
go to police training school.
If you grew up in Bema camp and you live with your father who they used to call them other ranks, from the private to warrant officer class 2.
Class 2, yeah.
You would understand the hardship that some of these military officers go through. And so when the noise starts, building up from the barracks, and the political leadership don't listen, it explodes, and it's becoming too many. You know, where we have a so-called sub-regional bloc, and what are the objectives again, as we read this morning? You see, Economic Community of West African States.
Are they meeting?
Nkrumah said we have gotten the political independence. Now we have to now be seeking the economic independence.
Right.
Because if you don't get the economic independence, then
You
the political instability will follow.
Ground zero.
And I keep referring to Honorable Kandapa when he says that the youth unemployment situation in this country is a security issue.
It actually was in
incidentally,
the National Security Report 2014.
Yes, and incidentally, all these military adventurers are youth, young people.
Yeah.
34, 20 something.
Wow.
President Rawlings came to office when he was 30 something.
Yeah. Who are frustrated with the system.
Yes, young soldiers. You know, young lieutenants, young colonels, and they will come with a lot of energy, push the people along, and then they also assume some, royal. This, you see them now enjoying the office, then they will go back, and then nothing happens again. How do we change that narrative? It is for the leadership at every point when they are elected into office to first of all change the way they look. You see, that presidency or presidential look must be changing in the sub-region, because you can't be living like a royal when your country is full of...
It's in turmoil and the poor.
You can't.
It's not good.
You can't, because we are hearing politicians having so much money. And you see, these things that we're talking about are some of the minute things that they don't even think about at the ECOWAS level.
No.
Because at the ECOWAS level, people, when they go for those ECOWAS meetings, go and say that, look, I think our people are angry because some of my ministers have been found with money in their bedrooms. Some of my appointees have had as much as $140 something thousand and 300 something in their. So we should be looking at these things, fellow president. They don't go and have that kind of discussion.
Okay.
They don't.
President Tinubu's mobilization of the Nigerian political structures, the legislature and governors to support his military action against Niger. How the political landscape is assessing this, and conversations among domestic political watchers, and what the ordinary Nigerian says about the move. Well, we have a man who's right in the thick of things. He is Ferdinand Duruhi. He is a broadcast journalist and defense and security correspondent in Nigeria. He joins us now on Zoom. Ferdinand, good morning. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, good morning to you. Thank you so much for letting me into this particular discussion.
What is the mood in Nigeria following ECOWAS chairman's thinking and decision to get into Niger ahead of the meeting on Thursday?
Well, I must say at this point, it's neither here nor there. Well, lots of people are tense, and the question on everybody's lips is, what exactly do we stand to gain from this? Now, let's go back and then see that in the last about 10 days, it's quite been apprehensive. Well, starting first from that ECOWAS meeting of the heads of states, where they did put out that ultimatum, and moving on from there, well, just about 5 days later, well, we saw the the defense chiefs of staffs convey in Abuja, and they did put out very strong messages, and in clear terms, well, what they said was everything, all cards are on the table, including a military option. Now, that's exactly what lots of people wanted to hear before they go into the streets, talking about the military being mobilized to march into Niger Republic. But permit me to say, well, that's not the exact picture. But when you look back, well, also during the week, well, we saw President Tinubu write to the Senate also. Now, basically, it was for two reasons. Well, first of all, well, to inform them about the particular situation in Benin Republic, and then also communicate ECOWAS's stance. Well, let's not forget again, what is a stand for ECOWAS?
Right.
Well, it is the fact that they have condemned every military action. And why exactly, are they worried? Well, they are worried. And that's because when you go back 2020, the 90s, and then the early, when you go to the start of the millennium in 2000 and to 2005, 2010, well, West Africa was about the most stable in terms of democracy. But fast forward then, well, 4 years later, well, we've seen as much as 9 coups take place in West Africa. Well, 5 of them successful, responsible for changes in some of these countries, including Mali, Burkina Faso, and others. And right now, what they are saying is perhaps that they've actually sat back for too long, and maybe this is exactly the reason why it has emboldened these guys to leave the barracks and then march onto the streets. Well, for several reasons. One of them is the fact that when you take a look at the countries where this military junta have actually, taken, planned this coup d'etat and then upstaged power. Well, are the people better in terms of security? It's a big no. You take a look at Mali, you take a look at Burkina Faso. These guys have not been able to control their borders. Well, we've seen proliferations of weapons. We've seen increasing activities of ISWAP and then every other element around there. So the military case of the military guys handling the security issues better, hasn't come to play over there. And then also you really want to ask, well, we know politicians, and the fact that, on the pessimistic side, some of us would say most of what the politicians, especially in Africa, have done, recently is all about regime protection. Now, that's exactly where the criticism is coming on. And they are saying, well, are the other guys, the other democratic countries in Africa worried, by wanting to march on Niger just because they want to protect themselves? Well, one of them, Nigeria, is President Nunu doing this to legitimize his government. Let's not forget he's still at the tribunal trying to secure legitimacy for his government. So those are some of the questions that people have asked.
Ferdinand, is Nigeria united behind President Tinubu?
Well, not at all. Well, let's go back to that letter again. Well, or perhaps I must say, from my own perspective, somebody who has indeed followed the proceedings, that any letter or perhaps any request, for a military action, in Niger must indeed satisfy some kind of curiosity, and those curiosities are because of the kind of relationship that we've had with Niger. By we, I mean Nigeria. Well, first of all, we really have to ask questions. How will it affect Nigerian, economic interest? Well, is the fact, that's one of those questions. And the truth is, when you take a look at, the economic relationship between Nigeria and Niger, it's quite a very, very strong. Now, that's about $195 million. Extra. We had 100 and Nigerian exports to Niger was about $195 million in 2021. Now, you're willing to throw this all away. Let's not also forget that Nigeria have got a strong interest also. That's exactly the reason why we're constructing that rail line from, Katsina to, going past 5 countries and then 5 states, I beg your pardon, or up until Maradi in Niger. And that project is worth 1.8 billion. And so, if something happens and Nigeria is seen at the center of it all, how will that affect Nigeria's interest? Permit me to backpedal a little bit. How come ECOWAS business all of a sudden seems to be all about Nigeria's business? And it's because of the roles Nigeria have played as regards ECOWAS and some of the military bodies that it has indeed put out there. We look at Liberia, we look at Sierra Leone, Liberia twice, well, and then we also take a look at even Ivory Coast, and you see that Nigeria has indeed been quite very active. But is that to say Nigeria is ECOWAS? No, not at all. President Tinubu is just the chairman right now, and maybe that's the reason why he's at the forefront of it. So, going back to those questions, to those curiosity that it must indeed satisfy. Well, we've talked about the economic interest. How would that, benefit Nigeria, or perhaps is it going to affect us? Affects the economic interest that we have. $195 million worth of trade export between two countries is no mere feat, and nobody wants to toy with that. Well, it also has to, answer the questions of the kind of social relationship that we have, where we're talking about as much as 7 states in Nigeria, states like Sokoto, Kebbi, Katsina, Zamfara, Jigawa, Yobe, and Borno having, sharing borders with Niger Republic. And so as far as we're concerned, the former president, President Buhari, did tell us that his cousins are in Niger. And so for lots of Nigerians, well, it's hard to draw this line between Nigerians and Nigerians. And all of a sudden, what happens to that kind of relationship that have been, builds with intermarriages and trade and others. So
Right.
it must also answer that kind of social questions. And even beyond that, well, let's take a look. Well, in whose overall interest? I've talked about it. Is it some people are very concerned, like myself.
Okay.
Is it the proxy war that's going to take place? Are we seeing some international powers being interested in ECOWAS and then being interested in Africa and then deciding to use Africa as a pawn? Some of the criticisms about Ukraine and the Russian war, and those are the kind of questions that it must also answer. So I think all in all, well, Nigerians are very worried, and whatever interest ECOWAS has with Nigeria in front, or perhaps with Nigeria playing any sort of role, must answer these curiosities for any Nigerian on why exactly there have to be an interest in
Ferdinand,
politics.
you have to hold on the line for me. Let me connect with Brigadier General Joseph Nunu Mensa. He served in the Ghana Army from 1961 to 1982, former Chief of Defense Staff. Good morning, sir. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, my dear young man. How are you?
I am greater than Accra, sir.
Thank you.
Now, Nigeria is leading us, and by Nigeria I'm saying Bola Tinubu, who's president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is leading us possibly into an onslaught on Niger. We have heard the narrative from Mali and Burkina Faso uniting with Niger to say they will fight back. Is that a wise decision to take, to have a military intervention in Niger?
Thank you very much. What I would say is this. First of all, we have been here before. Sometime in 2010 or thereabout, I was the advisor to late President Mills, on security matters. And we had a similar situation in Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. When Gbagbo was the president, there was election, and the opposition led by Ouattara, the current president, said that he had lost the election, that he should give power up and go away to, leave the seat of government. Now, ECOWAS met in Abuja, like the whole thing being played around again, and decided that they should go to war to remove him by force. Late President Mills, a very wise man, consulted me as his security advisor. The question he put me was very simple. I don't know how to fight a war. I'm never a soldier. You are my advisor. Tell me, what should I do? Now, to cut it short, I took 2 hours to educate him on what war is all about. And said, don't get involved in some stupid war which has nothing to do with you. Before you decide to go to war, it's the last resort for a government, because we're going to kill people and mess up a lot of things. It's not an easy decision to make. So ECOWAS heads of states shouldn't meet, and the president of Nigeria, as the ECOWAS chairman or whatever he is, decide that they should go to war and remove the soldiers who overthrew the government of the last president in Niger. It's a last resort. You exhaust all peaceful means. War is not a tea party. It's not a joke. It's not. Look, the Nigerians. I'm sure you were not born. Biafra went to war. Nigeria went to war. The Igbos seceded and went to war.
Right.
Many people died. So Nigeria should be the last place to push for war. War is not a party, not a tea party. It's a serious business. So saying that you're going to go to, first of all, the civilians took the decision to go to war. I don't know whether they consulted the military chiefs. And then it's not an easy job to just go to war. But you need to mobilize. You need to have resources to fight that war. That war, if it should come on, it will engulf the whole sub-region. There will be hell. I am telling you, hell. Because there are many problems that young people, if you look at the scenes from Niger, who are demonstrating support of the coup, and the same thing is here. It's across the whole of the African continent, and particularly in our sub-region. You can't get a job to do. You can't even get food to eat. You don't think about that. And look at how governments are being run in our sub-region. And then what they should be doing, our political leaders, is to tell their colleagues when they're playing the fool, when they're going wayward, to tell them, look, today you look at a TV like Al Jazeera. Ghanaians and Black Africans are marooned on the border between Tunisia and Algeria, trying to run away to Europe. I live not far from the American embassy, and about a week ago, the crowd I saw at the embassy there, it just made me sick. We can't feed our people here. What is wrong with us? And then when you misrule the government, I don't support military in politics at all. I don't support it. It's not our job to run a country. It's not our job. But when the politician play the fool and some soldiers get up and say enough's enough, then we say go and remove them from power. Do you know what involves in going to the fight in Niger? You can't just decide to do a thing like without a serious thought about what you are going into. You can start that war, but that war like a flame in the dry grass. The whole our region will be on fire. But the problems of Niger are the same problems of Ghana, Nigeria, unemployment, homelessness, misery, and so the whole youth. So if you don't take care, we will get involved and our own country will be burning as well.
What should ECOWAS be thinking about at this time? They have a meeting on Thursday. If you had the advice to give them, what would you say to ECOWAS?
My advice simply is walk out of this war mentality. Look, first of all, it's a useless threat. If you can't carry out a threat, you don't issue it. The president of Nigeria, who actually issued that threat on behalf of ECOWAS, should have done that, unless you are sure that you want to do what you promised to do. Otherwise, don't do it. Look, they should quietly walk back out of and try to negotiate the military out of politics. Like Rawlings did. Rawlings seized power in 1982, and quietly until almost 11 years, 93. It was a military government. They metamorphosed into a civil administration, and so you quietly work them out of power. It's not their job, but they have been forced to do what they did because we are running our country so bad. So bad. I don't like military coup, but it will come if you don't run your countries properly. So they should quietly negotiate with these people to get them out of politics. Have a timetable to return to a civilian rule, but to say you should get out, install the man you overthrew back in power. You think they are stupid? They will never do it.
Now, you tell me, sir, you have served and continue to serve. Does ECOWAS, the way you see it, have the capacity to mobilize troops and forces to be able to go into this war if they decide not to heed to your advice?
If you go and ask United States in Afghanistan, they have to run away from Afghanistan after 20 years of involvement, waste a lot of billions of dollars and achieve nothing. That's what I'm telling you. War is it's not easy. First of all, we don't even have the capacity to fight a war. We are hungry people. The other army cannot go and fight when they are hungry. Nigerian youth are demonstrating because of rise in prices and so on. So we don't have it. And if you even have it, when that war starts, you can't control it. It's like fire in a person with gas. It will explode. So I will tell them, don't get involved in a stupid unnecessary war, which will not benefit anybody. The problem is that all over the world, like I said earlier, youth are running away. Ghana, you go to American embassy, what I saw, it was sickening. We can't feed our young people. We can't find them jobs. People are doing galamsey, destroy our water bodies, and we are sitting there. We can't do anything. And when the youth are up in arms, then you say, well, go back and get power back to the back where you took power from. They will never do it. I feel the same situation. When I do one of the schools, I'm not the one who did the coup. You can't force them back into barracks. Quietly advise them, walk them out of politics. But then the way to stop coup d'etats and all these nonsense is that when you get power, run the government such a way that nobody will think about overthrowing you. I mean, today in Ghana here, look at the problems we have. Nothing is working well in Ghana. Nothing whatsoever. Even food you're going to have a crisis. And nobody seems to be aware that we are walking into a crisis. We are starting a war in Niger. Diverting attention from the crisis at home to something outside your borders. If Burkina Faso and Mali and Guinea have joined forces with Niger, if tomorrow you go and attack, they can attack. They can attack. What do you call it? Boku, and you are at war. Before you know, the whole region is at war. We don't want that.
I see.
So don't let these politicians. They don't think deep. Look, call your military chiefs. Ask them: is it feasible to fight a war and win? First of all, there are many examples around the world. America went to Libya. What happened? It's in a mess. They went to Iraq. It's in a mess. Went to Afghanistan. It's in a mess. And you leave West Africa in a mess if you get involved. So work out of it.
See, Ferdinand, stepping for me now. So you heard the general. He says, walk out of it. Is that the clarion call from where you sit behind your desk and running around Nigeria? Is that the sense you get that Nigerians and, in fact, Africans say, walk out?
I'm told that Nigeria, the Senate didn't vote for election. I don't know. I've heard it somewhere that Nigeria democracy, they voted and they said no. They didn't back the government to go to war in Niger. Now, I don't know what the government is going to do. If we are democracy and the people's representatives I say you don't go to war, you don't go. That is democracy. What I'm saying is that this war is not a joke. It isn't a joke. I've been to a major war. By June 4th and the 31st December, I don't know how old you are, whether you were born, whether you are aware of what happened. It's not a joke. It's silly, dangerous business. In Birmingham, I was the chief of staff, 1979, June 4th.
81.
My neighbor, you may have read our history, Nunu and his wife was shot dead that night. Had a baby, a baby of 10 months old. Just imagine, put yourself in that baby's shoe. Mother, father lying in a pool of blood. You're not going to have a fun. You're going to kill people. Because one man overthrew, you go to war. And you keep on mismanaging your country, you go to war. Look, Europe will tell us. Yet too, they are also enjoying our foolishness in Africa and in the developing world. Our leaders are driving. Look at Ghana here. You live in Ghana. If you landed from somewhere into Accra and you say Ghana is a poor country, you get it to IMF, you got $3 billion. Where's the money? I don't even know where the money has gone. Some part of it. You won't believe it. Because we are living like that means that cruises, huge cars. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I've been fortunate to live around the world, live in Canada, in America, in Britain for 12 years, in India, all sorts of places. We don't run the country as foolishly as we do. Then we get in trouble and then we start calling for military solution. It's not a military solution. A political solution is what we want.
And this political solution, do you think ECOWAS had their hands on the matter, really?
They didn't understand what they were doing. They didn't understand it. What they should have done was to call the military chiefs, quietly find out, is it feasible? First of all, they should decide that war is necessary. Is it necessary to go and kill people and mess up the whole place? All of us will be involved. Now, we are going to have a hunger situation on our hand very soon in Ghana. Very soon. We are going to have hunger. This is what the government
why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Togo and others should be concerned with. Not because one of your colleagues, look, what they are doing, they are afraid that similar situations will arise in their countries, Ghana and so on. But if they don't change, it will come, willy-nilly. If people are hungry, young men are hungry, what do you want them to do? Just walk in Accra and see young men pushing, selling stupid items on the road. I mean, come on, it's silly. And not that Ghana is poor. I mean, Ghana is not poor. I don't know how much of my background you know. I wasn't going to go to school even to become a CDS in the military. I was fishing. I was a fisherman's son. And nobody paid my school fees. I had to work because the people behind me supported me, pushed me to become who I am today. Today, you don't care about anybody. Go to the hospital, see, little hospital. I go there once in a while. See how filled the place is. You can't even maintain, you can't even support the hospital with infrastructure. Their needs, but toilet don't work. Nothing, water doesn't work. I had to go to Rich Hospital, 2009, 2010, to sort out their put my own money. So let's sit down, we leaders of Africa and the people who live in Africa, youth especially. I am 87, thereabout. 3 years time, God willing, I will be 90. I get angry today as I work. I said, why should you be working at this age? Work all your life. So
General,
the solution that it lies in our hands, especially the young people. I know you're a young man. You're not 80 yet.
No, I'm not 80 yet. General, so if I hear you, you say it is foolish to go to war at this time.
At any time. at any time, not at this time alone, at any time. Because the war is not, it's a serious business. And before you decide to go to war, all options would have been exhausted. Look at Russia attacking Ukraine. I know I've been there. I've been in Russia. I attended for 6 months. And look at Putin, what he brought upon Ukraine and his own country. Look at the mess we are in. When you go into a war in Niger, you are going to mess up the whole sub-region. And beyond that, Algeria says they are not going to support you. They're not part of ECOWAS, but they don't support you. Chad is no. So how do you fight a war? What kind of war? To put one man in power and kill so many people. Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, obviously. Well,
it doesn't make sense.
Let me bring in Ferdinand now. Ferdinand, thank you for joining us again. So you heard the general. He says war is not the option. It's not child's play. It's serious business. ECOWAS must look at the political issues and forget about war. What do you say? You are a defense and security journalist in Nigeria. What do you say?
Well, I totally agree with the general in that conclusion, talking about that, war is not the ideal, situation, that must be explored at this point. But then once again, well, let's not forget that for ECOWAS, well, what they have said is that every card is on the table. And then also the general understands that, we're talking about military men here, and that's perhaps the reason why the rhetoric coming out from ECOWAS needs to be a little bit strong. And that's because that's the kind of understanding that they have. It's very difficult for military men to understand any other language. Well, if you say you are just going to stay with negotiations, well, trust me, nothing is actually going to come out of those negotiations. It's just going to sit on the table all through. And then while we would look and say, well, war is not the best option. It's going to mess up the region. Well, the region, let's not also forget that the region isn't doing very well. It's not doing very well economically. And then also in terms of proliferation of weapons, crime is on the increase. Now, we ask ourselves one of those reasons, and then we see that, yes, it's actually because of some of the actors at play in some other parts of Africa. And then the world. Well, let's not forget what the crisis in Libya has done to us all. The proliferation of weapons within the West African region is actually linked to the war in Libya. And then also, well, one reason why we should all be very concerned, I know it's comforting to say, okay, well, let's leave Niger to Niger's business. It's the fact that most times, well, coup d'etats are followed by coups also, and so we begin to see some of these actors come into play because it becomes an open environment. I have planned my own coup. Some other person who is interested in that position begins to plan his own coup, and then just like we saw in African countries in the early 80s and 90s and even 90s, well, we see some elements come in. One person plants a coup, upstages another, plants another coup, upstages another. And guess what? We might even get into the situation like there is in Libya, where there are two strong men with military powers, at play. And what you get is nobody who is willing to sit on the table, and everybody just wants to fight.
Okay.
Well, it's also the same situation that is also in Sudan playing out. Now, that's exactly the reason why people are very worried when you allow these military characters come in. I think what the military characters have done politically is the fact that they have been able to use the ECOWAS weapon against them. They've been able to convey to the people in Mali that, hey, these people are trying to, they want to come and attack us. And so one way or the other, they've used the people as a shield. Now we see people coming out every day to come out and protest. Now, for me, I've seen so much of protest to realize that, well, not every banner you see on the street you should take very serious. And so when I see hundreds of thousands of people rallying behind, the junta, I definitely do not take all of them serious. And that's because for some people, they might want to stay with, the immediate devil that they see, other than relying on, whatever hopes and the ECOWAS are actually pushing. So let's be very careful with those rhetorics. Let us not take a look at those people or the narratives in Niger where people are not interested, in attacks, and they believe that the Nigerians themselves are much contented with the powers, of this, with the powers that they're talking about, the military powers.
I see.
And then also, I also want to say once again that while President Tinubu, who's the president of Nigeria, might be the chairman of ECOWAS, might preside over the meetings, might be the one who reads out the communique. Well, in the defense meeting that was, held a couple of days back, well, I saw 10 out of 15, and then for the other 5, well, these are persons with military government, and that's the reason why they weren't at the meeting. And no other person said any other thing. Nobody said they weren't interested. So let's not really look at this and think that it's a Nigerian agenda.
Right.
And then also you take a look at what has happened with Mali, the response from Mali, the response from Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
I think just like ECOWAS said, well, this seems to be like a gang, like a trade union of military coupists who have come together to protect themselves. It is first of all about regime protection, and that's because they know that if ECOWAS puts boots on the ground in Niger, well, not too soon from then, ECOWAS is also going to try and attempt to upstage, some of their businesses. Now, should we really fold our arms and then allow the powers at play? But once again, let me reiterate that.
But do you have the Ferdinand? Do you have the capacity? That's the question the general asked, and the general was very, very straight in that we do not have the capacity. If you look at what's happening now, President Mills in Ghana at the time chose diplomacy over war. Shouldn't we be going that direction because of our capacity issues?
Well, that's exactly the direction that ECOWAS, has taken. That's exactly where they are. Well, I know that late over the weekend, well, they sent some high-power delegation, to Niger to discuss with them. Well, they sent, one man who has been at the center of it, or one military or a military general who relinquished power when he was in charge in 1999 in Nigeria, General Abdulsalam Abubakar, and then who has continued to play that mediatory role in Africa. Well, they sent him to Niger, where he didn't just go alone. Well, they also sent a religious leader with him, the Sultan of Sokoto, who is about the head of the Muslim community in Nigeria. So it is not as if ECOWAS isn't exploring these other angles or dimension. But what ECOWAS have simply said is that we will not continue allow the proliferation of a coup to continue in Africa. How come all of a sudden some young men have become so excited about it and then want to recreate that situation that we had back in the 80s, wanting to grab power? And then when you take a look at what they have done security-wise, go to Mali and you see the forces at play, and you realize that they have not really satisfied those questions of even providing enough security, even as military men. So all in all, I just think that like ECOWAS have done, it might have been premature to put out that comment out there about a military, about having military boots in Niger, and maybe that's the reason why they are backpedaling a bit, realizing that, well, perhaps that card might have been too strong to have been played at the time it was played.
Let me ask you.
There's a need to sound a very strong message.
Right.
And then let's also not forget the fact that politically, well, Niger are also a signatory to some of these bilateral agreements, agreements which indeed states that, yes, we must allow democracy at play. And it was even signed in Niger, in fact, back in 2000. And so, do we feel comfortable having these agreements and bilateral agreements signed, and then all of a sudden we allow some people, just because you think you have access to power or because you think you have access to guns, to come in and then rubbish the entire situation? War might not be the best option, but also we must be very, very concerned with this trade union of coupists, dictators who have come in to seize power, and that's because we are not even safe either.
Let me ask you a final question, and then I'll bring General in. Do you want to confirm if soldiers in the Nigerian army are leaving the army because of this announcement to invade Niger?
No, not at all. No, not at all. No, not at all. I think over the weekend, it's sad to say, but then at the end of, on Friday, at the end of the meeting of the chief of staff, well, I think I saw a couple of stories, a couple of reports out there that I did wonder, and then even ask my colleagues, where did, some of us get this report from? And that's because from what was said, I don't think anything much was, was approved or was agreed, other than the fact that there is a need for countries in ECOWAS, for the ECOWAS bloc, to have a strong military alliance where they can share information, share intelligence, and if necessary, have a very strong military bloc that can indeed intervene in countries.
All right.
Now, that was exactly what was said. Well, nobody sought any permission or nobody gave any timelines on when anybody was going to go into Niger. And trust me, for the Nigerian military, well, we have our hands full right now, and nobody's thinking about quickly getting on any jets or, B-29s to go in and unleash mayhem in Niger. Not at all.
Thank you. Ferdinand Duruhi is a broadcast journalist and defense and security correspondent in Nigeria. We're grateful for your time this morning.
A pleasure.
Great. General, you are on. You have the final word on this one. Those who say Nigeria, for example, has not been able to fight Boko Haram. In Ghana, we have Boko and the Fulani situation on our hand. Go to other West African countries and they have their own challenges. Yet, the first thing we want to think about is to go to war. If you had the opportunity to address the ECOWAS meeting, what would you say to them?
Hello.
Hi.
The line, excuse me, the line is very faint. But no, I couldn't hear everything that went
so, General,
on
I'm saying
while
that.
I was listening to you. And
can you hear me now, sir?
Because sometimes I went dead. I couldn't hear anything at all.
Can you hear me now, sir? Can you hear me?
It's still not very clear. But let me make my comment based on the few that I heard from the gentleman who just left you.
Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you, but not happily. I mean,
okay.
But let me try again. Let's see. Try again.
Right. So, General, I'm saying that there are those who mention that we have not been able to fight Boko Haram in Nigeria.
Yes.
We have not been able to deal with the Fulani situation in Ghana, the Boko situation. We have not been able to deal with all those ones. And yet, we want to get into Niger to go and do what exactly? If you had a chance to address the ECOWAS meeting, which will be held on Thursday, what would you say to them?
You know what? I don't think we understand why there's Boko Haram, for example. I think we understand why the Galamsey, they are destroying our water bodies, all over the place. These are all economic issues. These young people, I've had Boko Haram who want to go and die just because you want to fight. Why did they kidnap these girls? I know nobody knows where the rest are. Somewhere left to go away. Others, we don't know where they are. But I don't think our leaders understand why the youth are up in arms, for example. These youth, they are hungry. Look, I have come from a situation in which they find themselves today, and I've bettered my life. They have no way of bettering their life. People are, those who are digging gold, destroying waterways. When Professor Paul Manson talked about it, they were trying to find some debt around him. Boko Haram, why are they fighting? Look, I believe in peaceful solutions. You go to war when there's no other option. When you have exhausted all peaceful options of solving a war. You don't go to war just because you want to fight. No. General Yakubu Gowon is alive today. He was at the head of the federal government when Ojukwu declared independence of Biafra. They had a very dirty, bitter war. Many Eastern Nigerians died, thousands of them, many of them. What did they get out of that war? When Ojukwu died, I was at the funeral with late President Rawlings, and Gowon paid Ojukwu such a tribute, beautiful tribute. He called him my brother. If there were young people in their churches, now it's around 90, they are thinking now, do you have to go to war and kill many Biafran children, hunger, poverty, cause so much mayhem? On reflection, it was a big mistake, but they were too young, too eager to prove that they were, they could do something. I wouldn't advise anybody to go to war, though I'm trained to fight if there's need to fight. War is, again, let me emphasize, an option that is the last one. You exhaust every situation. If we don't solve the problem of the youth in the sub-region or in Africa as a whole, hunger, poverty, and many, many others, whether we like it or not, they are going to cause trouble. The trouble will come because I have been through that, terrain before. I have to bring myself up to where I am today. Today, they don't have that option. Nobody thinks about them. They are hungry. You can see them on the streets. They are helpless. Young girls are all over the place. I mean, let the people who are running Africa, the sub-region, run them properly. Let them be seen to be doing their very best.
Right.
But when you are driving Land Cruisers, when everybody is driving a Land Cruiser, which as if it's a toy, when people are hungry, that to me is nonsensical. So when the coup comes, once somebody don't be fighting, don't be surprised by it. Let's run Africa in a way that people will see that the president is doing his very best. His best is not good enough.
General, so the way you talk now and looking at the economic trajectory, are we to see a lot more of these coups and desire for it uprising across the continent? Because that is indeed how the African leaders are living.
Yes, it's going to happen. I don't wish they happen, but they are going to happen willy-nilly. And this is very simple. People are hungry. Look, I sit down here. The course I'm having, you know where I come from? Not far from here. Winneba.
Right.
I'm a proper Winneba fisherman's son.
No debate.
People are hungry. They are calling me. I'm tired. But it's not my job to feed them. It's the president and the working power today to feed them. But they're not doing their job. They prefer to have Land Cruisers around the place. And that to me is silly. Then when a soldier, this was Rawlings 1979, got angry about the situation in the country. And another Rawlings will get up and mess us all up if we don't change. I'm prophesied. Look, I had a dream, and I don't dream just like that. Every dream I had has a meaning. The day we voted, 7th of December 2020, that night, my house is not far from the airport. The plane takes off. It's almost on par with my bedroom. I had some two horrible dreams. One dream was that a plane had taken off. That night we were voting, or we voted. And that the pilot was struggling in the cockpit to stabilize the plane. It was going to, crash. And the struggle went on, and in my deep sleep, I was praying to God to protect those on board, those on the ground. So there was a huge explosion, a huge fireball. I was still asleep. Not long after that, another dream. I was in Tema Harbor, Fishing Harbor, doing what I don't know how I got there, what I went to do there. And I saw something which was quite strange. A ship came in, a passenger ship, capsized, people were drowning. And for me, I was fishing before I went to school, so I could fish. I could swim like a fish. I was just wearing suits with coats, everything, suits. I dived into that. This is all in my dream, to save lives. It was such a horrible dream. When eventually I woke up, I asked myself, what's the meaning of these dreams? I've been trying then to talk to the president. Because I had a dream when I was going to overthrow. I had a clear dream, and it happened when I come out of overthrow in 1966. So this dream, when I had them, it's a revelation. I tried and tried and tried. After time I'm talking to you, I have not seen anybody to ask, what to do about this dream. No,
I see.
Because I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. But the way we are working this country, the way we are working in West Africa, look at Africa. I live in Britain. Today it's shameful to live in Britain. I was at Sandhurst, the biggest military college, best in the world.
That's right.
Okay, and my father was a fisherman. Today, you're a fisherman's father, you won't get anywhere. So we should tackle the basic problems of the country. We are not tackling them.
General, and obey ye.
Obey them. Obey I mean, fancy, but myself,
because of what?
Ghana will be. In fact, I don't see a future for Ghana and the rest of us. I don't see. Look, you watch your television on the border between Tunisia and Algeria. The Africans there, black Africans, they've been there for some time. They're being treated like animals. And I said, but haven't our leaders seen this thing going on and bring them back home? Get a land somewhere in the north there, a lot of land there. But I mean, build them beautiful things, settle them there. Even those who are destroy our water bodies, in the mining areas. They are just nobody has a solution. I don't know what we learn in the university. I didn't go to university. I went to O-level and I went to the army. But I've been such mediocrity in my life. Sitting down there, driving big cars, making annoying. One day I was standing at the traffic light, the old traffic light. I don't drive Porsche cars. My cars, I've got about 3, 4, 5 cars. They are all between 47 years and 25. That's what I drive.
Wow.
But I built 6, 7 school blocks.
Right.
O'Reilly Senior High School. That is what leadership should do. Invest in the youth, even private ones. But nobody's doing anything. The youth they are exhausted. They are tired. Anyway, tell them to go and march. They will march and turn.
What did you see at the Jowolu traffic light?
Pardon?
The traffic light where you were standing, the Jowolu traffic light. What did you see there? You said
I was there when one of these what do you call them? Land cruisers, 2 or 3 of them, passed with the lights blazing. It was red, and they passed through. One of the boys who was selling along the roadside said, "And quite shuffle with him."
Wow.
Because I don't drive air conditioning, I will not him. My car, I drive without any air conditioning. Even if I have, I will use it. You must be like the people to understand them. If you're a leader, you can't live air conditioned land cruisers, brand new ones. When they're hungry, they will be angry. They'll be angry, and when something happens, you will see what happened in Ghana. I've seen it before. I saw June 4th, instead of December. You will see hell. If I haven't seen hell before, hell will appear on the earth. Don't wait for hell to break loose. Wake up. Those in power, they should wake up. They have been in slumber for a long time. Then you will see fireworks, and all of us will be engulfed in that conflagration.
I thank you. Brigadier General Joseph Nunu Mensa, former CDS of the Republic. We're grateful for your time, sir.
God bless you too.
Bless you too, sir. Thank you.
Promis d'être pieux vis-à-vis du maître de la terre.
Bye.
La différence de
General, so obeying.
I have just 2 points to make, and I won't talk about this Niger matter again.
Why are you angry?
In Ghana,
Are you angry?
the first coup d'etat, 1966.
Right.
The reason was abusive and corrupt government.
Right.
That was the official reason given by the coup d'etat.
24th February 66.
1966. Then the last one, 1981. The last one that's
Right, cemented
successful
everything.
one.
To bring in the Fourth Republic.
Last one, 1981. Weak civilian rule, deteriorating economy.
Same reasons.
Where are we now? Is the economy deteriorating?
No, we are at the
Oh,
bend.
we've
Masa,
turned
it's
the
not a
corner.
political thing. It's an economic
We have
kabudo.
turned the
We
corner.
have turned the corner.
William.
Masa, I'm saying 19. That's about 42 years ago.
Yeah.
The reason for military to go back in this
But
country,
you have not seen the corner.
weak civilian rule and deteriorating economy.
Are you not seeing the
The
corner?
first one,
Are you not seeing the corner?
abusive and corrupt government.
William, see the corner.
I'm serious, Masa.
Helen,
Which
do you see
corner?
the corner?
Oh, I don't see the corner. And to be honest, expending energy to say the same thing every day
Mother.
is
And
getting
these
so
reasons is just this
boring.
Same
Boring.
stories, different headlines
Boring,
across the
boring.
continent. Same stories, just different headlines.
Edit-
The
I
kids
guess-
have a special way of saying it. They say same, brip, different. Brip.
We're not a serious continent, though. And that's the sub-region. See, check. You go on Google and check.
The land is fine.
The land is
Same thing. So,